Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gabriel. I'm from Adel Ecosystem Limited. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing, but before we're getting into what we're doing, I'd like to talk about the market and how we got to where we are today. So I would start with the question of why are we here? Of course, we're here because of cryptocurrency and the innovations around cryptocurrency. But I'd like to also address the question of how we got here. And the way I'd like to start that is with this quote from Abraham Lincoln, one of the American presidents, during the Gettysburg Address, talking about how governments are for the people, of the people, and by the people. If we look back at it from the standpoint of capitalism, capitalism is very sensitive to fueling innovation that fuels jobs and fuels competition. But at the same time, in order to fuel competition, we also need to be very sensitive to monopolies, making sure that monopolies don't control the market, because when a monopoly controls the market, then what happens is that we don't have competition, we then don't have innovation, and we don't have jobs, right? So part of this capitalist society is to be sensitive to these dynamics, but I would argue that money is controlled by monopolies. Okay, I like to refer to it as the religion of money. And if we argue that money is controlled by central governments or by central banks, then we can say that there is this issue where money, this religion of money, is controlled by these state-run monopolies. So the first person to challenge that over many centuries is Satoshi Nakamoto. He basically decided to disrupt this religion of money and come up with a currency which is for the people, by the people, and of the people. This cryptocurrency, and the reason why we're here, is really in our hands now. And what has happened is we have now a world that's divided. Some governments see cryptocurrency as an opportunity, and some governments see cryptocurrency as a threat. So now we are faced with a scenario where governments are now seeking the attention of their citizens, because governments that are interested in cryptocurrency, that are promoting cryptocurrency and aren't afraid of it, are saying to citizens of the world, come to our country, start up your crypto business here. We're interested in working with you, whether it's the Isle of Man, Gibraltar, Estonia, Singapore, and other types of governments. You can see that there's governments similar to startups in the enterprise space. Now we have startups in the government space saying to these citizens of the world, bring your businesses to our country, because through cryptocurrency, we want to fuel innovation, we want to fuel competition, and we want to bring jobs to our country. So we have this scenario where citizens are leaving potentially the country that they reside and opening up businesses in other countries because they're more friendly to cryptocurrencies. Another way of looking at it is from OTT. You may not be familiar with OTT. OTT is over-the-top service. Okay, over-the-top services is fueled by internet, and in the internet space, we have services in, let's say, the entertainment industry, which bypassed the incumbent service providers. Let's say they are the broadcasters of the industry. And a good example of an OTT provider is Netflix. Okay, Netflix bypassed the traditional movie industry and sending through video streaming directly to their consumers. We see the same thing in communications, OTT services such as Skype and GoToMeeting and other types of video services which have bypassed the telecommunications industry, removed the requirements for long-distance charges, and offering international video and audio calls for free. We have a computing scenario as well, where we have hosting providers which used to host their hosting services for multiple large corporations, and that has now moved into the cloud, and a cloud-based hosting provider could be viewed as an OTT service. So now we have this financial industry which is now bypassing the incumbents in the finance space by offering cryptocurrencies, whether it's Dash, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's Ethereum, and so on. So OTT is yet another over-the-top service, and through these over-the-top services, we see binding of these industries together. Because now with cryptocurrencies, we can offer services using cryptocurrencies for the entertainment industry, for the communications industry, for the computing industry using cryptocurrencies, and vice versa, all these industries working together. Now, coming to a little bit closer scenario of cloud services, which is really in the computing space, we can see that Bitcoin is really an evolution of cloud services in that, let's say cloud services is a centralized cloud, and Bitcoin has, blockchain has decentralized the cloud-based services. And it really takes cloud into the next level of using the similar types of expertise and taking it into a decentralized network. We bring in immutability, we bring trust, and that's why we're seeing all these different industries looking at blockchain as a potential evolution in their business practices. So in Adel, we're talking about ideas. We're an innovative company, we're a blockchain innovator. And so we like to talk about ideas a lot, and I've been talking about ideas up until now in terms of how all these ideas have evolved over the last several decades. And we can divide these ideas into revolutionary ideas and evolutionary ideas, okay? So from a revolutionary perspective, we're talking about technologies that really nobody has seen before, whether it's electricity or the telephone, that nobody's seen before and is using it for the first time and seeing the potential. Whereas evolutionary ideas are really looking at combining technologies and using the combination of technologies to create a new idea and to solve pain points and so on. But if we look at it from the standpoint of the evolution of these ideas, let's look at it back in the end of the 19th century. If we were to ask somebody at the end of the 19th century, what is electricity good for? Okay? They would probably say it's good for lights, right? Lights, that's the obvious requirement. We can light up our homes. We don't need to use candles anymore, okay? And of course, electricity has evolved over a century to what it is today. We could say the same thing about the internet. In 1990, if we were to ask the citizens, what is the internet good for? They would probably say email or communications. And over the last 30 years, we've seen how the internet has evolved as well. So now we're in the space of blockchain, and we can look at blockchain in the same capacity. What is blockchain good for? And the beauty of it is that we have tens of thousands of products, ideas, services that are being launched right now in blockchain. But the magic of blockchain is not only what it will look like in the next 5 years, but what will it look like in the next 30 years? How will people take what we have today in this room and evolve and make it better and take these ideas to the next level? And we find that very intriguing. So when we look at it from the next 10 years or 8 years, this is from Grand View Research, looks at the blockchain spending over the next 8 years, and we see it to be about $7.7 billion. And don't have this confused with the market cap of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, which of course exceeds 100 billion. This is more around spending. And we see a lot of this spending really focused in the next 8 years on the fintech space. So this is what one of our focuses are in Adel is to focus on innovation in fintech. But we also realize that there's a lot of industries in logistics, in government, in healthcare, Internet of Things, information communication technology, ICT, that will benefit from blockchain. But fintech is the low-hanging fruit, and that's where a lot of revenue is expected to come from in the next 8 years. Okay? We can also look at the evolution of blockchain from the standpoint of the Gartner hype cycle. You may be familiar with it, where we have a hype, and then we have this disillusionment or disappointment in technology, and then we have this plateau of productivity, which is basically brings back the expectations. And what's interesting is that blockchain is on its way down to this slope of disillusionment, which means that there's going to be a lot of disappointment in the next 2 to 3 to, let's say, 5 years. All these tens of thousands of blockchain projects, Bitcoin projects, Ethereum projects, smart contract projects, some of them are going to fail. Some of them just won't find a fit in the industries that they're trying to deploy. And we don't see the fit not only just from a technology perspective, we see it from the standpoint of people, process, and technology, where a lot of empires are going to be dismantled or destroyed because of blockchain. Empires in terms of monopolies that were enjoying a lot of revenue that are going to break down because blockchain is going to take out middlemen and monopolies, so there's going to be some upsetting scenarios there. And but also on a personal level, there are individuals in an organization that say, well, if I implement blockchain, does that mean that my department goes from 200 people down to 50? And does that also mean that if I make the decision to choose blockchain as a technology, am I out of a job in 5 years? Right? So there's a very personal nature as well to the implementation of blockchain. And all of us around the room that are implementing these technologies should be aware of these personal dynamics when you're selling your solutions, whether it's B2B or in the B2C space. Okay? So there's a disruption from multiple levels, economically, technologically, as well as personally. We're in the business of innovation. So what we've created is this process in order to fuel innovation. We are not a DAO, distributed autonomous organization. We're not a DAO in the sense that DAOs typically look at projects from the standpoint of execution. Okay? What we're doing is we're taking projects all the way down to the, what we say, the napkin design at the bar, and taking it from the idea stage. Okay? So we take an idea from the idea stage, and because we want to protect blockchain, we want to protect the stakeholders of the community, we want to protect the blockchain as a brand, we want to ensure that the projects are ethical, moral, and legal. And so we go through this filtering process, and another way is, this is how we differentiate from the DAO, because the DAO is completely decentralized. And in a DAO model, if somebody says, okay, I want to have a betting platform to find out when a state official is going to be assassinated, then we don't consider that to be ethical, right? So we wouldn't allow such a project. So we want to make sure that they're ethical, moral, and legal. And once they are, then they go through a community incubation process. So through the membership of having different members with legal background, fiduciary background, let's say accounting, regulatory compliance, VC funding, marketing, sales, operational experience, all that experience comes together in this incubation process, and then we work on a document in order to improve that idea. And also, the beauty of incubation is that somebody from China can say, well, you know, I like this idea, but you're really focusing too much on the European market. We need to really change this idea in order for me to bring it into the Chinese market, because it can work in China, but we need to make some changes. And I can help with those changes through the incubation. Same with somebody from Venezuela or South America, for example, right? So that's the beauty of this incubation, and it's all part of this aspect of collaboration on a global level in order to bring this expertise together as a community. And once we have this incubated document, we call it like this marketing document, which we would post online, then we go to a business planning stage. And we go through the process again of incubation. And this is where we bring a much more comprehensive document together, because now we're business planning. Okay? So the first stage is I2, which is Idea Incubation, and this next stage is called P2, which we call Project Planning. Okay? And again, the expertise comes together as a team in order to prepare that business plan. So we have the community working on the business plan, but we also have expertise at this project review committee in order to help with the incubation and of the business plan. Then we go through a vote, the community votes on the project, and then we go to this execution stage, which we call enterprise execution, or E2. So I2, P2, E2 is our process. We also realize that the community are not going to be experts in business planning. They're not going to be experts in terms of idea incubation. So that's why we see a lot of effort at the project review committee first, as we will be doing mainly this work, and we're seeing that aspect now. And then as the community becomes better at planning and they become more comfortable in the process, then they can participate in the documentation collaboration themselves. The same thing with the project planning. Most of the effort will be at the project review committee, and then we expect the community, as they get more comfortable and confident, and then they will take over most of that effort. So the idea stage is understanding the market, the needs, the timing, and working together to see whether there's a viable process moving forward, looking at competition. Then there's the planning stage, and we look at planning from vision, strategy, objectives, and executable actions, right? So typical business planning process. And eventually we think we're going to get to the process where we're going to cookie cut this business planning process. Maybe the first one will take 6 months, and then as we do more business plans, it'll maybe bring it down to, let's say, a single month. And then there's the execution, and this is where we actually are running the project with staff, with operational expertise, marketing, and we're running it like another company, okay? So there's some do's and don'ts in terms of streamlining collaboration. Some of the do's is that we want our community to ask questions, right? Sometimes we ask questions, but we don't provide answers or suggestions in terms of those answers. So we want to incentivize the community to not only ask questions, but also to provide answers, okay? We want to test with obstacles. Often we get into the stage where we say, okay, that's not a good idea, or it's not a good idea for this reason, but we don't offer solutions, okay? We have a lot of expertise, so not just providing blockers, but also providing some solutions, and also bring your own ideas into this initiative. We don't want, in the same capacity, for our members to be just spectators. We want them to address and to provide edits to the documentation and have the confidence in order to do the edits as well. And just not to provide some comments, but also to participate as an editor. But we realize that this is, this is like a wiki process, right? So we're using Wikipedia type tools. We call it wiki tools. And in just like Wikipedia, there's maybe 5,000, 10,000 people that built up Wikipedia, but how many millions, hundreds of millions of people utilize Wikipedia as a resource, right? And we realize there's going to be a small percentage that actually do the work, and then most of the people will be spectators anyway. So it's not going to be any surprises there. There are a lot of challenges, We're working on a sensitive engine of people, process, and technology. There are barriers to market. There's time to market. There's cost to market that we need to address in terms of the business planning, security issues, regulatory compliance, copycats, and so on. There's challenges ahead of us, but when you're aware of those challenges, then you could work those challenges into the business planning process. So we've been thinking about that, okay? Next is the challenges of what we call the dark side of blockchain, or even the dark side of cryptocurrency. There's issues of loyalty. People follow the money. If there's a big hype in terms of a ICO, then people follow that hype. Even though it might be a scam, day traders will play with that coin, even though they may think that there's a scam behind it, because they're day traders, so they're working on windows of 24-hour opportunities in order to make money. There's accountability. The accountability in the real world is not the same type of accountability that we find in crypto, right? We often work with people that we don't see in person, and therefore we're working on services that, are we blaming the service, or are we blaming the user of that service? And these still need to be worked out. Protection is a big issue, right? If you lose your password for your bank account, your bank will give you access to your funds. But if you lose your password to your crypto funds, you're out of your money, right? And these also need to be worked out. Customer support. Are there services that have phone support, email support, and your what we call SOL? Anybody know what SOL means? You're shit out of luck. Yeah? Knowledge, right? Knowledge is a big problem because how do we learn about these services in crypto? Often there's tutorials online, but those also are being worked out so that people can learn about the crypto community much more. You have people in crypto for the last 5 years. They're doing quite well, navigating through the different aspects of the crypto communities. But then you have people that just joined crypto a month ago, and they're like, how do I figure all this stuff out? There's nobody to ask, right? So then we work with forums and communities for that. Okay? So let me finish off by saying we are a community incubator for blockchain. Innovation, we're all about innovation, so we wanted to give you a perspective of how we see innovation and how innovation has evolved. We believe the formula for success is brain power, passion, and stakeholder participation in projects, and we believe that's a winning formula, and that's what we're working on moving forward. So, thank you.